We've just arrived in Debet Village of Lori after about 2.5 hours drive. The weather is beautiful, the area is filled with Maytime fragrances, and it's about the perfect time to start our show. Hi everyone, and welcome to DebeTalks. It's again me, Nana Vardanyan from the communications team at COAF. Today my travel and DebeTalk companion is our very own Anahit Hakobyan, a COAF pioneer and our village programs manager. We'll be talking about the ins and outs of the people of Debet. How big is the village, what are the main occupations here, and other interesting topics that we explore in the scope of our Smart Debet initiative. Anahit-jan, welcome to the show.
Hi Nana-jan, thanks for having me again.
Every village has its unique characteristics. What are the ones for Debet?
Well, obviously, Debet is very beautiful and at all seasons. The nature, the uneven hilly landscape, the sound of the river, sometimes crooked houses with pointed roofs. This sounds amazing for a tourist, right?
Sounds the perfect time to stay at our concept hotel, huh?
Yeah, I'm sure. But when you zoom in a bit and try to see everything more thoroughly and from a local perspective, there are a lot of issues that the growth of the village is facing now. And studying this problem is very crucial so that we at COAF base on them while designing our programs within this Smart Debet initiative.
Anahit, I know that our team recently conducted a population census in Debet. Let's expand more on this. What kind of data did we collect?
You're absolutely right, Nane. We conducted a house-by-house census of all the residents in Debet. The survey was conducted by one of our doctors, Lucina Antonian, who was also doing a primary health screening of the villagers. Now we have a detailed database with all the demographic data, including social and health conditions of each inhabitant in the village. The database is also accompanied with a detailed map with all the houses, all the addresses, and the inhabitants.
I'm curious if there was an existing data available to you.
Not much, actually. There was no precise data on the population. For example, the reported population size of the village was about 917 to be more precise. But when we did this house-by-house census, it turned out only 735 people are now living in Debet. So it was very challenging for the municipality, for the locals to collect this data on a regular basis and to see the real picture of the village.
So in order to collect this data, does it mean the team, you mentioned Lucina Antonian, visited the houses one by one and met with the families?
Yeah, and each family member was asked the same questions, the same questionnaire was used for everyone, and even for the kids, the parents answered the questions for them. So we have the data on every inhabitant, literally.
Sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, it was.
And why was the needs assessment important at the initial phase of the project?
Our experience has shown that projects prove to be far more efficient and impactful when they are based on data, especially the one we collect ourselves. The data is driving us in several ways. I can mention, first and foremost, it ensures transparency for our donors and partners so that when they invest in our projects, they have full understanding of the impact their contribution will make. Second is that the information we collect now will be used as baseline data to conduct the evaluation and measure the impact the programs within the Smart Debet initiative will have later.
And how the data facilitate with the designing of new projects?
It works in two ways, actually. First is that, for example, when we have a program in mind, we rely on the data to assess the feasibility, the need. A vivid example is that for building a kindergarten, the demographic data helps us to identify the area mostly populated with children. And vice versa, data is driving us to design a specific policy. For instance, the population analysis that we made showed that there is little or no population growth in Debet. Can you imagine that? So some of the strategies to target this issue is either boosting the birth rate or affect the in-migration. So now we are designing a pronatal policy to increase the birth rate in Debet And also our preventive health programs are helping to decrease the mortality rate. And we are also designing programs to attract people to come and live in Debet. And actually, there are a few people that already messaged us that they are looking for houses in Debet and want to purchase houses and to come and live, even from abroad, actually. That's
Are you
fantastic.
talking about economic development programs or what?
Yes, not only economic, all the infrastructure projects, the reviving of the whole village, actually.
I see. Am I right that it's been 7 months that you and the team have been traveling to Debet at least once a week?
That's right.
So you've been working with the municipality staff hand in hand, and I'm sure you're quite familiar with the local businesses. Have you had any interesting findings about the population and the village so far?
Yes, absolutely. Let me share some with you. For example, when you look at the demographic map I mentioned earlier, you can easily spot the empty houses. Unfortunately, we have a lot of those. Currently, there are 83 abandoned houses in Debet. Can you imagine that?
Out of how many?
Out of 272.
I see.
Yeah, that's a lot. So now you can see what we mean when we say that by 2030 the village will be abandoned if everything remains the same. As you know from our previous Debet talks with Koryon, we started a process of in-migration in Debet actually. We are building houses for families from Artsakh in Debet. It was either here or Russia for these families. So these families will move to Debet and in turn contribute to the growth of population here. Actually, one of the issues Debet is facing now is that still 25% of the men population here pursues migrant seasonal work. This is obvious when you look at the 40-50-year-old men's demographic, which is twice less than women of same age. And if we couple that with the number of people who migrate to the mountains for animal husbandry, we get an almost empty village during the long period of spring and summer. This is devastating, actually. And so obviously our infrastructure and business development projects are surely targeting these major problems that exist in Debet now.
By the way, what are the main occupations in Debet? What kind of job opportunities do people have?
The village heavily relies on agriculture. 67% of the population is occupied with both cattle breeding and farming. And only 8% of the villagers are not occupied with agriculture. So this shows that while designing our economic development programs, the priority focus is definitely agriculture. Actually, very interesting data here that the information unveiled is that 86% of the villagers are excluded from the financial system, meaning they do not have a bank account and not only bank account. With this, we can assume that the shadow economy is still present, which is a large issue and we need to target it. Another interesting data is that 95% of the villagers is still using wood for heating during the winter months, which directly means deforestation. So the village needs a proper heating system. And fortunately, our partners, My Forest Armenia, is busy solving this problem.
For those who don't know, My Forest Armenia is one of our good partners, which has a nursery covering around 1.5 hectares area on the grounds of our COAF campus. The nursery has diverse seedlings. There are oak, ash tree, maple, pine, walnut, and horse chestnut tree seedlings. So make sure to visit there when in Debet. Anahit, thank you so much for a very data-driven Debet Talks. It was a pleasure to talk to you today.
Thank you, Nana. It was a pleasure for me too.
Thank you all for listening. If you enjoy our podcast, please subscribe to our channels on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Deezer. Until next time.